friend. You're listening to The Sustainable Bodyworker, the podcast for massage therapists who want to grow thriving, purpose-led businesses without the burnout. Here we talk about nervous system aligned business strategy, pricing that makes sense, client work that doesn't deplete you, and how to build a career that actually supports your life. I'm your host, Gretchen Pop, massage therapist, mentor, educator, and recovering overachiever. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sustainable Bodyworker podcast. Now, if you listened to last week's episode, then you know I made the case that the massage profession does not just need more business owners or solo practitioners, it needs better employers. And I stand by that. If you haven't checked that out yet, go listen to that episode because this one is building on that premise. And we're doing a whole series on becoming an employer in the massage profession. Now, I really do believe that there is a huge opportunity in this profession for more thoughtful practitioners to create workplaces where talented massage therapists can actually thrive, instead of feeling like their only options are to either work in a franchise, work in a mismanaged small business, or go out on their own before they are truly ready. But today, I want to add a really important layer to that conversation. Just because becoming an employer is a valid path does not mean it is the right next step for everyone. And just because you are busy, maxed out, or overbooked, or feeling ready for more does not automatically mean you are ready to hire. This is the part I really want to slow down and talk through today because I think a lot of people feel pressure around this. Maybe they have this idea that once they get busy enough, the obvious next step is to hire someone. Maybe they think that hiring is the only way to scale. Yes, at one point, it was the primary way to scale a massage or wellness business. Maybe they think that bringing on an employee is what makes the business feel more legitimate or that you're actually a successful entrepreneur. I get that. Maybe they're just exhausted and craving relief, and it feels like hiring another massage therapist is the answer for that. And sometimes it is, but not always. And the landscape of entrepreneurship is changing with the amount of technology that's available. I want to say that one of the biggest things I want people to walk away from this episode understanding is that hiring is not the only way to grow anymore. It's not the only way to break through the income ceiling of one-on-one hands-on work. We live in a totally different time now. Technology has opened up so many options for practitioners who want to grow beyond just the hours they can physically put their hands on bodies. There's online courses, workshops, digital resources, memberships, higher level client programs, all kinds of ways to expand what you do without immediately jumping to the conclusion that hiring another person is the next obvious step. So if you're feeling pressure to hire, whether that pressure is coming from the industry, from social media, from the way that you think businesses are supposed to grow, or just from the discomfort of being busy and not knowing what comes next, I want to give you permission to pause and really think about it. Because it is much easier to bring someone on than it is to realize it wasn't the right choice and have to let them go. And that is not me saying that you should sit on your hands forever either. I actually made that mistake too. When I built out my clinic, I went from a single treatment room to having 3 treatment rooms in the space. And if you have one treatment room, you're not in there 100% of the time anyway, so it's totally possible to maximize that space by bringing in someone else when you're not there. That could look like an employee, and it could also look like a room renter depending on what you want. But once I had 3 treatment rooms, there was absolutely room to grow. And technically, my husband was my first employee. He's a massage therapist as well. But he and I worked at the same time as much as possible, which meant we still had another treatment room sitting there available all the time. And even the rooms we were using were available whenever we weren't actively working. So realistically, I could have hired so much sooner than I did and maximized that space quite a bit more. But I sat on that decision for a really long time. And then when I finally did hire my first employee, that wasn't my husband, I still made mistakes. She was really great in a lot of ways, but as I started getting more clear on leadership and more clear on the kind of culture I wanted to create, it became obvious that she was not actually aligned with the business in the long term. On top of that, I discovered that I was paying her too much and it was actually pushing us into the red. That's a mistake I really want to help more people avoid because a lot of us start out with very good intentions. We want to pay generously. We want to be the opposite of the places that underpaid us. We want to be fair. We want people to feel valued. But if you hire before you really know your numbers and before you really understand what your business can support, you could create a situation that becomes very difficult to backtrack from. So, the lesson I took from that was not wait forever, and it was not hire fast. It was that if you are sitting on the decision, you should use that time well. Use that time to get clear on the culture you want to create, the numbers, the actual role itself, the kind of person that you're actually looking for, and how this hire is supposed to support the business. Because if you rush into it, especially just because you're tired or overbooked, you can create a much bigger mess than the one you were trying to solve. So let's talk about what actually makes someone ready to hire. Now, client demand is obviously one piece of it. If you have a wait list, if you're overbooked, if you're turning people away consistently, that does matter. But having demand does not automatically mean your new employee will be fully booked the minute they walk through the door. And that's something I really want people to understand. Just because you have 20 people on your wait list does not mean those 20 people are automatically going to want to book with your new employee. You need a strategy there. You need to understand that it is your responsibility as the employer to get that person booked. It's your responsibility to market them, to position them well, to help transfer trust, and to do everything you possibly can to make sure that they have clients on their table. You don't just hire someone and then tell them, well, if you're not booked, you don't need to be here. No worries there. That employee is relying on you for a job, for a paycheck. They are relying on you to get them booked. And if after a while you have done that, you've gotten clients on their table and people are still not rebooking with them, or they're not getting positive reviews, or everybody still insists on only seeing you, then yes, something needs to be looked at. Maybe that person needs more training. Maybe they need more support. Maybe you need some client feedback to figure out what the problem is. And maybe they're simply not the right fit. But all of that still reflects back on leadership. Readiness is not just, I'm busy enough. Readiness looks more like this. You have demand, yes, but you also have a real plan for how to get this new person booked. You understand your finances well enough to know what you can afford to pay them. You have systems in place. You have policies in place, both for your clientele and this practitioner. You know how you want people showing up in your business. You know what their role actually is, and you can articulate that so that they can show up adequately for it. You have standards of practice, both for yourself and anyone new who joins the team. You have enough time to onboard them well, and you have enough leadership capacity to actually manage them. Those things matter just as much as client demand does. In fact, I'd actually argue they matter more. Because if you don't have those things in place, you're not really hiring a person into a business. You're dropping them into chaos and then expecting them to help solve it. And that almost never works the way people hope it will. For example, I think one of the clearest signs that someone is ready to hire is that they have already written out all the way things are done in their business, even if right now they're the only one doing them. Write out your own opening checklist as though you're an employee. Write out your own closing checklist as though you're an employee. Write out what needs to happen before a client arrives or during the transition between clients, after the session, at the end of the day, all of it. Because I cannot tell you how many people I've worked with who try to figure out all of that after they hire someone, or they build the checklist because the new hire simply needs a checklist. And sure, some people can figure it out as they go, but a lot of really great practitioners do not want to guess their way through your business. They want to know how to succeed in your space. They want to know what's expected of them. They want to know where things are, how you like certain things handled, even if you're not picky about it, what consistency matters to you, and how to fit into the client experience that you've created. The last thing most people want to do is figure out things their own way and then find out later on that you would have preferred it to be done differently, or that even a client was uncomfortable because they were used to one experience with you and got a very different one with your employee. That's not a good feeling for anyone. And I want to encourage anyone interested in the reason why all that matters and why that's so important, especially if you're the type of person who is really, lax and you don't really need checklists for yourself. It's totally fine if they want to do things slightly differently. I want to encourage you to read the book, The E Myth Revisited. It's an incredible resource to understand why the franchise standardization model actually works and why this is so important, not just for your team, but for your client experience as well. At the end of the day, clarity matters. And this is where vision matters too. Because the clearer you are on the kind of space that you're building, the easier it is to hire the right person for it. At my clinic, for example, we had a very strong vision around self care. We emphasized it for our clients and we emphasized it for ourselves as practitioners too. We had a policy that our people could receive massage for free. We traded with each other, we used the sauna, we used the In Harmony vibration mat. We really believed that when we embody the health and wellness that we're trying to offer to our clients, it becomes something that we can share from a place of actually living it ourselves instead of just talking about it. And I made the mistake more than once of hiring people whose body work was exceptional, but who did not personally value self care in the same way that we did. I hoped that by bringing them into a space where self care was emphasized, they would start to take it on for themselves. And that was me trying to be nurturing, but it was also me misunderstanding something really important. I cannot hire people for their potential alignment. I need to hire people who are already aligned. It's kind of like dating for potential, right? Don't hire for potential. People show you who they are the very first time. Because when I hired exceptional body workers who did not actually value self care the way that I did, even though they were highly skilled, it ended up being a nightmare every single time. Different version of a nightmare, but it was always a nightmare. The alignment was not there, and skill alone was not enough to make it work. And this is another big sign of readiness. You know what your culture is, you know what matters most in your business, and you're able to hire for alignment with that, not just for skill or convenience. Another thing I think is really important here is that you have enough time to onboard well. This is where a lot of people get into trouble. They think that as soon as I hire someone, I'll be able to hand off the overflow, train as I go, and it'll sort itself out. Especially if you hire someone with experience, right? You think that the experience will mean something. No, no, no. Especially if you're hiring a newer therapist, you really do need the time to train them, time to observe them, time to support them, time to answer those questions, help them build confidence, and time to watch how they interact with clients and how they carry themselves inside your business. And I really think that you need to be available to witness that for the first 90 days. Because those first 90 days are where you are going to find out if this person is actually a fit for your team. If you're not available to witness that, then you're missing a huge part of what needs to happen in the hiring process. I once consulted with someone who thought she was ready to hire because she was about to have a baby in a couple of months. She thought it made sense because she needed support. And objectively, yeah, you want someone to take over the clientele while you're off on maternity leave. And I told her very directly, no, this actually is not the right time. Not because hiring was a bad idea forever. I think she would make an incredible employer, actually. But because in the few months before the baby came, she needed that time to prepare to hire, not just go grab someone. She needed time for SOPs, standards of practice, right? Time for the job posting, time for interviews, time to find the right person, and then time to actually onboard them. If she hired right before going on maternity leave, then the person would be barely brought on and she would immediately be gone. And that's not support, that's abandonment. You can't just go on maternity leave right after hiring someone and expect it to work. You need to be there. You need to be available. You need to help manage the clients, guide the process, and support that person while they're getting their footing. So, one really clear sign that you are not ready yet is that you do not actually have the bandwidth to be present for your new hire. And another really clear sign is that you have not looked at the numbers. If you have not talked to an accountant or at the very least use a really solid system to understand your numbers, like the Know Your Numbers workshop that we have available in the Sustainable Body Worker membership, and you don't know what you can actually afford to pay, then you're not ready yet. And that doesn't mean never, it just means not yet. Another sign you're not ready is if the whole reason you want to hire is simply because you're overbooked and desperate for relief. I understand that feeling, but overwhelm is not a hiring strategy. And hiring does not automatically create freedom. It creates more responsibility, actually. It can absolutely create freedom over time if you are a good leader, if you train well, if you support your people well, if you make good hiring decisions, if you help that person build a strong book, and if the business is set up well to support them, then yes, eventually it can create so much more spaciousness, more income, and more freedom. But in the beginning, especially with your first employee, hiring creates an entirely new role for you. You're not just a practitioner anymore. You are a manager, you're a leader, you're responsible for making sure that this person is booked, supported, trained, and successful. And that's not passive income, that's leadership. So, if what you really want is something more hands off, that's where I think people need to get really honest about the type of role that they're actually creating. Because sometimes what people think they want is an employee, but what they really want is a room renter. If you truly want someone to come in, do their own thing, maybe take some overflow, maybe be in the space when you're not there, and you don't really want to manage them, train them, or create a consistent branded experience around them, then a room renter or independent contractor may be a better fit. Now, that comes with limitations, of course. You don't have much control over how they treat clients, the exact services they provide, the way that they operate, their schedule, their vacations, any of that. And financially, there is a ceiling there too, because you're usually charging a flat rent or some version of rent based on time or use. But if what you truly want is to be more hands off, then that model might be more aligned. On the other hand, if you're going to put them on your website, use your booking software, decide what they charge, train them in your way of doing things, give them SOPs, ask them to uphold your brand standards, or have any say in how the client experience is delivered, then what you want is very likely a W 2 employee. And people get themselves into a huge mess when they try to blur that line. So that's another readiness question. Do you actually want to be a leader and an employer? Or do you want a more hands off income stream with less control? Because those are different things. And there's not a right or wrong answer there, but there is a right answer for you. Now, I want to say something that I think will save a lot of people a lot of grief. When you do decide to hire, and especially when you are hiring your very first employee, I really believe that person should be as similar to you as possible. I see so many practitioners make the mistake of hiring someone who offers something completely different because they think it will complement the business. For example, if they run a deep tissue orthopedic style practice and decide to bring on a lymphatic therapist because technically those clients could benefit from lymphatic work, I'm not denying that, I agree 100%. Or maybe they bring on someone very energy based because they think it adds another dimension and absolutely valid in its own realm, right? Those services are absolutely complementary in theory, but your existing clientele came to you for a reason. They were attracted to your specific style of work. And it's already hard enough to transfer your clients to a new person, even when that new person is very similar in style and experience and modalities to you. People love you. They trust you. They want your personality, your hands, your exact way of doing things. So, if you're trying to solve the problem of being overbooked and you want to hand off some of your existing demand, the easiest hire is going to be someone who is as similar to you as possible. Someone where you can genuinely say to clients, you're going to receive very similar care here. And that's much easier to sell than, I know you came here for this very specific kind of work, but now I want you to go see someone who does something completely different. That's a lot harder. It's possible, but not as easy. So, there's another sign of readiness too. You've got clarity not just around wanting help, but around what kind of help actually solves the problem you're having. And this is where I want to say something that may feel a little less exciting, but it really matters. Please have a real employment contract in place. I know a lot of people in this profession still do handshake deals because they want things to feel trusting and casual, and I understand that impulse. Especially when you're hiring another practitioner, it can feel like you're building something heart led and collaborative, and you don't want to make it feel cold or overly formal. But the truth is, having things clearly laid out in writing is not untrusting, it's responsible. Because when you hire the wrong person, and unfortunately most of us do at one point or another, or when someone turns out to be less aligned than you thought, this is not the moment that you want to realize you never properly protected yourself. I learned that lesson the hard way, as many people do. At my clinic, I spent 12 weeks training practitioners in neuromuscular cupping therapy and in the unique protocols that we used in the business. And that was a major investment of time, energy, and mentorship on my part. And I've had people go through that training, then turn around and start marketing their own cupping business in the same area while giving me a completely different story to my face about why they were leaving my business. And that kind of experience changes how you see structure and contracts and protecting yourself. It made me realize that being generous and trusting is not enough. You also need to be protected. You need clear agreements. You need clear expectations. You need things in writing, not because you expect the worst from people, but because if the worst does happen, you're not left scrambling after the fact or disagreeing about what the agreement actually was in the first place. I also learned this in a different way when I hired too quickly. During another one of my earlier hiring days, I hired two people at the same time who were both really skilled, and I think part of me was hoping that between the two of them, I could make it work. Neither of them was really the right fit, but I ignored that because I had the demand, I needed help, and I wanted it to work badly enough that I let myself overlook what was right in front of me. And that was another huge lesson for me. Because whether the issue is legal structure, alignment, or culture, so much of this comes back to discernment early on. The interview process really matters. The first 90 days matter. And the reason they matter so much is because this is when people are usually on their best behavior. They're showing you the polished, perfect version of themselves that they think you want to see. So, if there's already a red flag during the interview process or in those first few months, it's very unlikely to get better later. Usually it gets 10 times worse. And that is why I say, and I really mean this, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. That lesson cost me enough that I do not say it lightly. Hire slow, fire fast. But hire slowly and intentionally enough that you never have to do the fast firing. You will, unfortunately, sometimes have to let people go, and that's just part of the business. But when you have this discernment early on and you are really intentional in this way, it is less likely to happen. So, if you're listening to this and trying to decide whether you're ready to hire, here's the questions I really want you asking yourself. Feel free to pause after I ask this and really feel an answer come up in your brain as you go through this. Do I actually want to lead, or do I just want relief? Do I know my numbers and what I can actually afford to pay? Do I have enough demand, and do I have a real plan to get this person booked? Do I know the culture I want to create in my business? Do I have standards of practice written out, policies in place? Do I know what kind of role I am actually creating? Do I have the time and bandwidth to support someone well for the first 90 days? And am I hiring for alignment, not just for skill or convenience? If the answer to those questions is yes, then maybe you are ready. If the answer is mostly no, that doesn't mean you failed. It just means that your next step is probably not hiring yet and working on those no's, right? It's okay. Because again, this is not the only way to grow. If you're in that in between place where you're trying to figure out whether hiring is truly your next aligned step or whether another path, like maybe creating an online course or a different kind of offer, might actually make more sense for your business right now, the Sustainable Success Blueprint is exactly where I would point you. It's a really accessible way to start thinking through this decision intentionally instead of reactively, and it helps you get honest about what kind of growth actually fits you. And if you are already in the process of hiring, or you know for sure that team growth is where you're headed, then the First Time Employer's Guide inside the Sustainable Bodyworker membership is where I'd send you next. That's where I really go step by step through the hiring process, onboarding, compensation, support, leadership, all the nitty gritty details that actually make this work. The links for both of those are in the show notes. They both offer continuing education credits, and I make both of them as affordable and easy for you to opt into because if you're going to do this, I want you to do it well. I want as many people to be supported in this process as possible. Like I said in my previous episode, we need more MT owned and operated businesses which provide aligned employment opportunities for those of us who are simply happiest and provide the best work as well supported employees. Those opportunities don't get created out of thin air without intention. So if you're going to hire someone and grow your team, do it intentionally. I don't want you rushing into it because you're tired. I don't want you hiring from a state of panic. And I don't want you creating a bigger mess than the one you are trying to fix. I want you to create something thoughtful, sustainable, something that supports you and the practitioner you bring in. And if you're not there yet, then your job right now is not to force it, it's to prepare well. Thank you so much for being here with me today. If this episode gave you something to think about, I would love for you to share it with another massage therapist or clinic owner who's in that stage of wondering what comes next. And if you have thoughts about this one, come find me on Instagram at sustainable.bodyworker and let me know. I really do love hearing what lands for you and what conversations are coming up around these episodes. Next week, we're going to keep going with this series and talk about how to become the kind of employer good therapists actually want to stay with. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to The Sustainable Body Worker. If something resonated for you today, grab your free breakthrough session, which includes a custom hypnotherapy track to help you unlock the next level. Grab it now with the link in the show notes. And to hear more, hit subscribe. I'll see you next time.